explanation, but apologies sort of too. 2 weeks ago, a lady sent in a question saying that her father was dying of cancer, came home, and he had like 4 days left to live. And her mother, his wife, took his cigarettes from him. The guy's been a tobacco addict his whole life. And very likely her taking his cigarettes put him into withdrawal and actually helped kill him probably. And so I made the offhanded comment that she should be horsewhipped, which is not exactly a loving thing to say. So I was being a little hyperbolic, but also not exactly my intent. I would not advocate horsewhipping anyone. So apologies for the miscommunication, also for the unloving comment. We also got a seminar coming up on the 19th and 20th. Would recommend you attending if you can. And now, we don't have a lot of pre-sent questions. So if you have questions, please type them in, because I think we probably will get to your live questions if you have a chance to. John makes the comment that he emailed the PBS today and followed up by leaving a message with the traffic manager. Please do go to the website, the reallove.com website, or to the, what's the other one called? We have so many websites now, it makes me nuts. RealAnswersTV.com. And you will see 2 places in either website that will tell you how to find the website for the PBS station in your area. Please do contact them, because PBS stations do pay attention to their local listeners, and the more PBS stations we have that play the program, the better. So, looking forward to getting your questions. Well, let me start with those whose questions did get sent in. Here's somebody who says, when I don't have expectations of my partner, and I'm content with no matter what she does or doesn't do, I feel flat, not very loving or connected with her. So I begin consciously doing loving, affectionate behaviors which help me feel more connected. However, she became distant and pissy, her words, not mine, for no reason she was willing to share, and I found myself feeling disappointed. How do I have no expectations and feel connected and loving? I'm making calls and attending a Real Love group and getting on conference calls. It's real common for people to describe how early in Real Love they detach themselves from expectations of their partner, and then their relationship feels less involved or connected. And what they're really describing is, when they say they detach themselves from expectations, is not more real love. What they're doing is they're taking a relationship that was based on, and that's what you're describing here, they're taking a relationship that is based on the trading of imitation love. So there's lots of this going on, and what they're doing is they're separating themselves from the intertwining, the trading of imitation love. So they're detaching from imitation love, and they're assuming that the detachment from imitation love is therefore real love, and it's not. So look at this description. When I don't have expectations of my partner, then I feel flat. What you're describing is that in-between place that most people go through, of where you separate yourself, you try to detach from imitation love, but you haven't yet reached real love. And so now you're in that in-between place where you're not using imitation, but you haven't gotten to the real thing either. So what have you got? Nothing. And it does feel flat. You don't have anything at all. There's no coin, nothing, no currency, no real, no imitation. And now both you and your partner are annoyed. In fact, many people will sometimes say to me, well, so I've just started learning about real love. I'm learning about not using imitation. And if anything, learning about real love has made my relationship worse. Yeah, I bet so. Because when you first learn how you've been doing it all wrong and you go to quit it, well, now you got nothing. So I get that. But it's kind of like quitting smoking. You first quit smoking, and when people go to quit smoking, how fun is that? I don't know anybody, I haven't met anybody who first quit smoking and said, wow, this is really fun. Yeah, I really enjoyed quitting smoking. Going through the withdrawal is just awful. But the alternative is staying addicted. So it's usually hard in the beginning. And that's the whole reason we stay addicted, is that you go to withdraw from your addiction and you experience pain. So you go, ooh, I don't like that. So what's your natural reaction? To use your addictive substance. So well, now you're addicted again. And so then people withdraw for a little while and they say, well, I don't like that. So they go back to the addiction again. And so unfortunately, addicts go through the most difficult part of withdrawal over and over and over again. And the only way to go through withdrawal is to go through it completely, to stop. It's the only way to get clean. And that's what you and your partner are going to have to go through if you want to go through and find out what's on the other side, which is to learn how to love each other unconditionally. You have to go through a period of real discomfort. And that's going to take a lot of practice. And it will usually involve your being truthful with and experiencing real love from not just each other, but from other people. To just do it with each other is too hard for most people. Angela says, my nephew is 13. His parents are divorced. They're both empty and afraid. He lives with his mom, my niece. Two things. He's in town at my house for spring break. His dad called to make arrangements to pick him up and take him on a trip for a few days. But before he did that, he criticized him for not calling when he got to town and called him a mama's boy. Oh, boys really like to be called mama's boys. And told him that he wasn't grateful. My nephew changed his mind and told his mom the next day that he didn't want to go. Yeah, I'll bet. His mom said, okay. His dad was angrier and said that she was wrong for allowing him to make the decision not to go. He said that he's a good dad and deserves the Father of the Year award. That was a side note. The other thing is that this same nephew misses the school bus at least once a week. What consequences would be good? Okay, different subject. Okay, so the father would only naturally think that he is a good father. He's probably a much better father than his own father was. So if you were raised in hell by Satan and you improved on your father and did a better job with your own kid, you would naturally think that you were a great dad. So he probably doesn't see what he's doing as wrong. And if he's encouraging, and here's the part where parents just go horrifyingly wrong. If parents are teaching their children to do what they think is right, so like if he's telling his boy, we're going to go on an activity that is good for you, then they think that whatever means they use to get the child to do the thing that is good for them is irrelevant. So the means is unimportant. Gandhi used to talk about this. The people that he worked with in India used to talk about whatever means that we use to get the Brits out is irrelevant as long as we get them out. And Gandhi used to make the point that you can't separate the means from the end. And how brilliant is that? We talk about that in real love all the time. It has to be done with love. And the analogy that Gandhi used to use was, you can't separate the means from the end any more than you can separate the seed from the tree that it produces. So, if you plant a seed, it will produce whatever the seed was. Period. So, whatever means you use to produce a thing, that means is whatever the end will be. So, if you plant something with hatred, hatred will be the end. So, it doesn't matter if we, for example, are teaching our children to be responsible. If we teach them with anger, the end will be hate and anger. So now we have a child who, ironically, may or may not be responsible. Because if you have a child who is unloved and unloving and hateful and empty, the responsible part probably will never even get through. It might for a short period of time, but the child is destroyed. The mother's involvement in this, she's probably empty too, and so she ends up feeding into this horrible thing in a victim way. This kid is like screwed. So what can you do? You really can't. I mean, this kid's 13 years old. You can sit and actually listen to this child. So when these parents are at this kid going, you ought to this and you ought to this and you're a mama's boy and you can say to the child when he gets off the phone with his dad, you can sit with the kid and say, tell me what just went on there. How did you feel? How did you feel when your dad said blank? Did you feel happy? Did you feel cared about? Did you see? Most of us don't dare speak to a 13-year-old child, and to see, you're not interfering, you're not labeling the parent anything, you're giving the child a chance to speak up as a human being and be heard. You think the kid won't dig that? That's just going to be a hoot for this kid. You get to teach this child real love principles. You get to ask, did you feel cared about? Did you feel loved? The kid's going to give you the answers. You don't need to label anybody anything. This kid's going to spill his guts to you if he feels cared about. It'll be a hoot. Now, what consequences if the kid misses the school bus? Oh, the natural consequences. You're the one that missed the bus. You're the one that needs to get to school. So you can walk. If it's too far to walk, you can ride a bike. If you're in the middle of downtown Baltimore, walking and riding a bike may not be realistic. If the kid surely has accumulated funds of some kind, so he may have to, for example, you teach the kid how he can look up a taxi in the yellow pages. Then he can call the taxi and spend what may be the equivalent of an entire month's allowance to get himself to school. Whatever. But each of our kids had to do that one time, and they realized that we weren't kidding. And we didn't ever have to get them out of bed ever again. They realized it was their job, not mine. And that was after age 8. We told them once they got to be 8 years old, we were never going to get them out of bed again for anything ever. If they got up late, too bad. If they came running into the kitchen and said, oh my gosh, I'm late, we went, I'll be. And it was their job to get there. They catch on pretty quick. They're not stupid. Let's see. Yeah. Is this the 16-year-old?
The whole thing.
Whole thing?
Came in 2 parts.
Okay. Here's one that says, my 16-year-old sister. Is that the one where it starts? My 16-year-old sister was just caught posting photographs of herself wearing only bra and panties in MySpace, and other photographs of her making out with her boyfriend in a hot tub. An older sister has called all the older children to let us know of these photos. My parents are extremely disappointed and upset with my youngest sister. How can I best love her? Oh, just talk to her. The worst thing you can do is to sit down with her and do the thing which it sounds like the whole family's doing. At least that's what it sounds like. I don't want to make a judgment about it, but this thing of has called all the older children. I mean, it sounds like the old calling down the wrath of God approach. You don't need to get the whole family all excited and have everybody looking down their nose at her and saying, you are immoral, you're bad, you're all of that. That approach will tend to elicit a couple of really unproductive reactions in her. One of them is to make her feel really small and immoral and awful and guilty. The whole reason that somebody would do something like that is that they already don't feel valued. Hello? How obvious is this? The only reason that a 16-year-old girl would pose next to naked in front of the world, which is what you're doing if you're on MySpace, is so that the whole world would look at her and say, gosh, we really like you. Isn't that like so obvious that it's hardly necessary for me to say? The girl clearly doesn't feel cared for. So then everybody in her family is now going to come down on her like a ton of bricks and say, we don't care about you. So are they going to be making things better or worse? So she's either going to, so the first thing is, the first possible reaction is she's going to feel worse about herself and feel more like doing things like this. Except now she's going to be sneakier about it, and she's going to be doing it in private with her boyfriend and be having sex with her boyfriend. So that's going to be the first reaction. Or she's going to react with anger and say, up yours, and now she's going to do it more openly on MySpace, or as she gets older, doing it in the local strip bar, or however. Kids don't do this when they feel loved. You don't see 16-year-old girls who feel unconditionally loved by their families, who are sitting in the living room and go, you know, I'm feeling loved, but I have an I have an uncontrollable urge to pose naked on the internet. Does that make sense to anybody? The thought is laughable. It would be impossible. So the idea is to get to the root of the thing. So if somebody were to sit down and talk to her like a sensible human being and say, I understand you put some pictures on the internet. How were you feeling at the time? Talk to me about it. Tell me what's going on. Tell me about your boyfriend. Tell me about school. Tell me, how are you doing? How are you? Instead of blowing up the issue about the pictures, maybe even just drop that for a second and ask her about her. Gee, wouldn't that be just like an incredibly novel thought? Instead of making her, who she is, equal to, equal sign, the pictures of her on the internet. See? How about if we just asked her about her life instead of coming down and punching her some more? The kid needs to be loved. That's what she needs. Imagine. But we're going to make her feel all ashamed and horrible. And how do you think people get to be prostitutes, by the way? How do you think? How do you think people get to be posing as whores on porn sites? How do you think this happens? Because they were loved and happy and felt unconditionally cared for and suddenly had an urge to do this? Do you get it? How do you think people ended up being drug addicts? Because they were loved and happy and they went, I think I want to stick a needle in my vein and feel what it's like, what morphine is like. Is anybody paying attention? All of these things are a reaction to pain. And then when people treat their pain, everybody around them says, we don't care about your pain. That's irrelevant to us. We want you to stop treating your pain. Insanity. Absolute insanity. Then the question here is loving my sister over the phone really possible when she's surrounded by judgmental family members? Yeah. You can call her on the phone and ask her if she can get to a place where she can talk without being interrupted. And then you can say, I just called to love you and to support you and to tell you that I don't have an opinion. I am calling not to tell you what to do, not to tell you what I think. I'm calling to see how you are doing. You think she's not going to feel that in your voice? You think that can't be done over the phone? Can't you feel it even as I'm saying it? And I'm not even saying it to her. I'm saying it to you, pretending that you're her. Sure, she can feel it over the phone. There have been times that people have extended a compassionate hand to me over the phone or over the internet when I've just wept. Do it. But you've got to ask her if she's in a place where she can talk to you first. Because she can't be surrounded by the lynch mob. She can't be surrounded by the posse when you call to love her. Rockin' Robin said she lost sound. Does everybody else have sound? I'm just doing a little technical check.
Sound checks are okay.
Okay. I'm going to get to John's question here in a second. I just had a really unusual comment here that I wanted to read. Somebody wrote this earlier today. I've had 3 or 4 consecutive days, he writes, where I'm feeling, this is hysterical, full and just overall great. I usually have tight muscles in my neck caused by stress, tension, and fear. I've been having this for years. But I don't even have that, he says. Also, I can see others as having the right to make their own choices, which have absolutely nothing to do with me. Are you getting this? He's saying nothing but good things. And what he's saying is, I don't know what to do with this. I haven't had 3 or 4 consecutive days this good in so long, I can't remember ever having had them in my life. And he's going, I'm worried about this. He says, the amazing thing about this is my circumstances have not been ideal. For example, I need to replace my computer. The motherboard has decided not to love me unconditionally. My income tax is more than I expected. I work on commission, and this month my check is the smallest ever. Someone that I was seeing told me at dinner last Friday that they don't love me anymore, and I'm just not getting my way. So things are not going well, and what worries me is I don't care. So how do I know if my feeling good isn't just my ability to manipulate getting and protecting behaviors to overcome my way of thinking? Things are going too well. So what he's worried about is he like tricking himself? Well, I know this man. And so I actually called him. I first met this man 2.5 years ago. And he smelled angry. He looked angry. He spoke angry. He had a billboard on his forehead that flashed, I am angry. He was angry about everything. He first called here and he ordered some real love books. And he called back within a few hours and said, cancel my order. Because he was mad about something somebody here had done. Then he asked Mike, who works here, to do something. And within a few hours, he was furious at Mike because Mike had done, who knows, nothing. Then he was mad at Alicia. Then he was mad at Donna. Then he was mad at me. Then he was mad at the furniture. He was mad at people constantly. He got up mad. He was mad all day long. He went to bed mad. This was one angry man. So I called him about his email, and I said, this one that I just read to you. And I said, are you kidding me? I said, do you not remember what you were like 2.5 years ago? Well, he did, mostly. And he said, and I'm quoting here, because this was on the phone earlier, he said, well, I just don't have anything to be mad about. And I said, the world hasn't changed in those 2.5 years. You have. And boy, he really has. This is an astonishing thing to see. He's going to be coming, by the way, if you guys want to meet him. He's going to be coming to the Atlanta seminar. If you ever want to see an example of somebody whose life has changed, I have said before that possibly the most difficult condition or disease on the planet to change, way harder than cocaine addiction, is victimhood. And this guy was a sterling example. And wow, his life has really changed. And it's a result of people loving him. But in greater part, it's a result of what he did. He persisted in telling the truth. He persisted in attending conference calls. He persisted in coming to webcasts. This guy goes on conference calls just about every day of the week. He's a miracle. Just stunning. And if you're wondering who it is, I won't tell you his name. It's Bill. Oh, I'm sorry. But it is Bill, and he's a miracle. Amazing man. John says, I walked by a father and son the other day at the local park. Hang on. They had been practicing baseball with another group of kids, age 9 through 12. The father was a big man and was towering over his son while he was saying, "You are playing like a girl." Oh, man. You ladies, I realize it's not a kind thing, but this is just, the guy just as well have punched his kid in the mouth. You are playing like a girl. You swing like a pigeon. Oh, this is horrible. You are embarrassing me. I can't believe you are embarrassing me. If you want to go back out there and embarrass yourself, go right ahead. But you will not embarrass me. Oh, man. I was amazed that this was flowing out of this man's mouth. It was none of my business, but I wish I could have helped that situation. But I know that there was no way that this man could have heard anything. Oh, isn't that just a fact? Don't you sometimes, I must admit, I do sometimes. You want to go, I sometimes want to get a great big fishing pole. It would take a very big one. Take a great big man like this, tie him by his ankles, strip him naked, take the fishing pole and attach it to his ankles, and then dangle him up in front of everybody, and then play those exact words that he said to his son back over a loudspeaker to him over and over again until he gets the point, until he hears the words that he just said. They're horrifyingly injurious to the little boy. but play them back to the father as though you were saying them to him as a little boy. Oh, you can bet that the father heard words like that over and over again. That he wasn't loved. Golly. By the way, when we say things like, sometimes it's a common thing to say that if somebody is a sexual abuser, they were sexually abused. That's usually not the case. And that reflects how little we understand the cause of abuse. People don't become sexual abusers because they were sexually abused. They become sexual abusers because they weren't loved. That's the wound. And saying that's what I mean by this guy. It's not, he doesn't say the words to his son necessarily that he heard. It's that he says unloving words to his son because he heard unloving words. So we don't necessarily pass on the wound in the way we got it, but we do pass on the same wound in that we weren't loved. That's the wound we pass on. Awful. Yeah, Rockin' Robin says, sounds like the macho man syndrome. Yeah, and you know, it's no worse than like the controlling mother syndrome or the whatever. It's really just the unloving human being syndrome. It doesn't really matter how we don't love somebody. Whether it's done by being the big tough guy, whether it's done by being the controlling person, whether it's done by being the withdrawing parent, but not loved is not loved. It's all the same stuff. It's just awful, horrifying. A gay man was talking to me earlier today and was talking about how he was listening to a radio show. And he tends to consistently listen to a talk show host. And ironically, he keeps listening to the same talk show host who will, every other day or so, make little snide remarks about homosexuals. So like he'll be talking to a guy who's complaining about his wife, and you know, he'll roll over and in the morning and look at her and make some snide comment about how she looks. And the talk show host will say, well, yeah, at least though she's not a man, at least you're not waking up next to a man. And this gay man, who's a friend of mine, says, you know, see, this man's always making little homophobic remarks. And the more we talked, I didn't need to say anything. The more we talked, my gay friend realized, why do I keep tuning in to this radio show? Why do I keep tuning in to the same talk show host that I know is homophobic? Why do I keep tuning in to the same talk show host and expecting him to become a different human being for me? Bingo! That's the answer. Anytime we expect somebody else to change to please us, we become their slave. We are the stupid person. And being irritated at the other person is just dumb. And I said to him, that guy is going to be homophobic and make snotty little comments about gay people probably till the day he dies. So now you know what he's like. Expecting him to change? Silly. So you can count how many times he's stupid, or you can quit listening to his show. He was going to write him a letter, and I just burst into laughter. All he would do is probably read your letter on the show and use that as yet another opportunity to make fun of gay people. You just make his whole day. How dumb would that be, huh? Here's a couple. The husband wrote and said, we would appreciate some advice concerning our 12-year-old son. I'll change his name, call it Fred, since that's what I used to call all of my children when I couldn't remember their names. Anyway. When you have a moment. He's always been rather reclusive and distant, But now that he's becoming a teen, he's angry and appears to be depressed. He's content to spend much of his time gaming, as in video games, if we let him. Much of this anger is focused at his family, both parents and older brother, and he's often rude to all of us. He shows minimal responsibility. He's non-compliant with what he's told to do, with even the simplest requests, and participates in very few activities outside of school. He's not done well in school this year so far, but this seems to have improved the last few weeks. We're concerned about him, but we're at a loss as to how to reach someone this distant. We would appreciate your insight and would like to speak with you when you have a few moments. The wife says, I see Fred a little differently. Yes, he does not like, hates is his word, to be around his family, but he's very social with his friends, which pretty much rules out depression, by the way, because his father saw him as depressed and withdrawn. So he hates being around his family. He does enjoy his time to himself and loves to be outside with nature, exploring. People who are depressed do not love to be in nature. He has just not had the opportunity to do this, not living in the country anymore. He misses this. Being in crowds and loud noises have always bothered him. He also feels that we are rude to him, and he plays his games to escape us. He feels everything is about responsibility and work and not any fun with us. He usually does not accept responsibility easily and blames everyone else, making himself the victim. He normally becomes angry with me if I'm not clear. When he becomes angry, he usually attacks and can be like a dog with a bone. Although lately, he has also become more affectionate, coming up and hugging me and wanting my attention. As I see, I know I have taught him well, getting and protecting behaviors that are certainly not making him happy. I'm working on changing my behavior and hope we can help Fred find his happy self. And then love the parents. And so here's a kid who needs to learn to be responsible. He's resisting responsibility. The mother doesn't know what to do really about it, and the dad is trying to control the kid, and the kid is hating it and withdrawing from his parents. So what do you do? The kid's got to learn responsibility, but he's also got to have a feeling that he's not being nagged to death. So what I suggest parents do is children tend to view rules and responsibilities as something that do nothing but restrict them and are burdens to them. Children need to have an opportunity to learn that rules are also something that free them, so that if you do your responsibilities, now you're free. So sometimes what I do with kids is say, look, here are some jobs that need to be done. Jobs A, B, C, A through G. Pick 3 of these jobs that you want to do. These are all the jobs that are available. You get to choose 3 of them. You get to participate in the choosing. If they can help choose the jobs, that's a help. Sometimes they don't get to always choose them, but if they get to choose, that's a help. Now, the cool thing is, you get to choose some. There are some jobs that you don't get a choice about, like say, you have to clean up after yourself when you make a mess doing whatever it is. But when you've done your jobs, then we don't get to bother you anymore. You're free. So what I sometimes with kids say is, these are not only your jobs of responsibility, these cards that you fill out every day. So when I'm counseling kids and parents at the same time, I say these are not only jobs of responsibility, these are also what we call shut-up cards. So when in a day, here's the card on which are listed, say, 5 responsibilities. Once you've done these responsibilities in a day, these are the cards with which you can hold up the card to your parents and hand the card to your parents. Your parents now have to shut up. Now, I wouldn't use that term with your parents. I wouldn't say you have to now shut up. But you hand the card to your parents. Your parents have nothing now to nag you about. That's the beauty of keeping the law or of doing your jobs. In our house, once kids did their responsibilities, they could do pretty much whatever they wanted to. They didn't have a curfew. They weren't told, come here, do this, do that. Once your jobs are done, goodbye. our kids' friends were jealous of them because they didn't have a curfew. Once their jobs were done, we didn't care what they did. Bye. We'll see you. We'll see you tomorrow morning in time for the meeting before school. If you want to stay up all night long and live with how it feels to stay up all night during school tomorrow, welcome to that little lesson in life. But a kid who is responsible and does his jobs gets to learn by natural consequences instead of being nagged by his parents. Children really dig that. And that's how it works in real life. For example, when we're in the car, Donna drives. Donna always drives the speed limit. Well, when she drives the speed limit and she hears a cop car coming up behind her, neither of us even turn around and look to see if the cop car is coming for us because we know we're keeping the law. That's how it should work for kids. If you're not breaking the law, you shouldn't have to worry about anything. And we need to teach our children the same principle. Just simply get your responsibilities out of the way. That's what I tell the kids. I tell them straight, wouldn't you love to see your parents finally shut up? Yeah, I really would. Then do your job. How long does it take to empty the garbage, I say? Well, in fact, if I'm at their house, or even if I'm at my house, I say, well, why don't we time it? I will empty the garbage and we'll time it. I did this with all of my kids. They would complain about a job and I'd say, all right, I want to hear the end of this. And I would do their job. And I would time it. Now, actually, the kids hated this. And the other kids learned this lesson from me doing the job of any other child. And they wouldn't allow me to do their jobs because I would always do their jobs at breakneck speed. And I'd go as fast as I could and empty the garbage. And I would go, I'll be darned. I've been hearing you complain about doing your job, the garbage, all this time. And I just discovered that it takes 1 minute and 45 seconds to empty the garbage. I guess I pretty much don't have sympathy for you anymore. So get your job over with. Do the garbage in 3 minutes and let's get this pain done with. As it is, you spend, what, 30 minutes a week complaining about doing the garbage when it would take 4 minutes to actually do it. I would call you stupid. And the kids and the parents both get the lesson. Much easier to live this way. Let's see. Manon had a good question. Did I miss it?
I asked you to repeat it. Put on the next one.
Okay. Yeah, please. I just cut and paste it because I missed it. Pleasanton. I have felt as though I have been getting along well with my almost 12-year-old son, yet had a very hard time not taking it personally when he was disappointed that I was going to be going with my husband and son to his baseball game. I go to all the games, and he likes it when I go to the games, yet he's used to his routine of riding with my husband and sitting in the front seat, and me driving myself separately. Your thoughts on how I could handle this better? I know it's not his job to love me, and yet it hurt to feel so rejected. Interesting. It's entirely your choice what you do with that. See, just because a child requests a thing from you doesn't mean you have to do it. So, the child says, I would rather that you came in a separate car. Well, if you enjoy more going to the game with your husband, you and your husband are the primary unit of the family there, sweetie. And I've told my kids that from the time that they were old enough to understand milk. You get to choose whether you go with your husband everywhere. And that's a good opportunity to explain that to your child. You say, do you know, my favorite person on the planet, and I've told all my kids this from an early age, my favorite person is your dad. Your dad's favorite person is me. We are the primary team of this family. And together, we work at loving you. So, we're really tickled. We are really tickled every time that we get to take you to your baseball game. But there's nothing that separates us. So I understand that you like to spend time with your dad. That's very cool, if that's what you prefer. On the other hand, if you choose to allow him to use that as time that he spends with his dad, then you may choose to do that. That's up to you. Because sometimes kids do need individual time with parents. We've always had kids who at various times have liked to spend alone time with one parent or the other. And we discuss it with each other and either allow those times or don't. All I'm saying is you have to discuss it with your husband and choose whether you wish it to happen or not. But don't make it a result of being blackmailed and doing it because you feel guilty. Don't do that. You decide whether that's what you want to do. Is it clear enough for you? And if you decide not, then he's going to have to live with it. But if you're feeling hurt for being rejected, that's a whole separate thing. You're going to have to get over that because it's not your kid's job to love you. Parenting is a completely one-way deal. In parenting, we love the kids. And that's the whole definition of real love, is unconditionally loving the children with no expectation of anything in return. So if I love my child and my child says, well, I love Dad or I love Mom, but I'm not going to love you today. Tough. That fact virtually defines parenting, is that we love them and there are times that they don't love us back. Too bad. Let's see. What if there are times, I don't know how to pronounce that. Deanne? Probably. What if there are times when you do have to be around people that are rude, like the radio host? For example, my husband's ex. There are times when we come in contact with her at the kids' events where she is constantly putting down my husband in front of the children, puts the children and everyone else down, either in person or on the phone. Obviously, she isn't feeling loved, and I get that, but it still drives me absolutely crazy when she does it. I don't know the best way to handle the situation or myself in that moment. All right, so if she puts your husband down, there isn't anything you do. Because your husband's an adult, and that's up to him to handle. If she puts him down, how does he handle it? Nothing. He just realizes that she's empty and afraid and alone and rolls his eyes inside of his head without doing it at her and just goes and does nothing. What if she puts the children down? You're still not going to change her. Never try to teach a pig to sing. It frustrates you and annoys the pig. If somebody is drowning, it doesn't matter how much you tell that person not to drown. They're still drowning. They will kick and thrash their arms and do everything they can to keep their head above water. And you can't wish them to not drown. So, you got a choice. You can do your best to love the children, and then before the event and after the event, explain her behavior. This is very educational. You can say, did you notice when, whatever her name is, Susie, we'll call her. Did you notice when Susie said, you children are stinky, nasty little pigs? I mean, because she's going to say things like that. So, why do people act like that? You'll see examples of this in the parenting book. When she acts like that, why does she act like that? You can explain to them her behavior. Her behavior is a wonderful opportunity to explain the principles of real love. So, you can't stop her, But you can use her behavior to teach the kids about human behavior. If she's harming the kids, if the way she treats them is harmful despite your loving them, then you may need to make it so that the kids aren't at as many events where she's there. But I've rarely found that necessary. If you are loving the children and teaching them, that's the whole goal. We can't keep our children away from unloving people. She's just one. Think about it. You're going to be sending your kids to Sunday schools, to public schools. You're going to be sending them out into everywhere they go. They're going to run into foolish, drowning people like this woman. Your husband's ex, radio hosts. That's pretty much our whole goal as parents, is to prepare our children to be around people like this, so that we can love them and teach them to the point that when they're around people like this, they don't empty out and they don't drown. So we don't want to protect them from these people. We don't want to remove them from these people. We don't want to rescue them. We want to prepare them. So I didn't try to save my children from people like that. No, not at all. In fact, my children would sometimes come home from school and they would say, "Oh, my teacher is just terrible and she's unfair and she's blah, blah, blah." And I'd say, "Great, this is great. Let's talk about this. What are we going to do? What are you going to do tomorrow? What can we do so that you can respond to that better?" Wonderful teaching opportunities. But I certainly never tried to save them. In fact, if we try to save our children, we often teach them that they're weak. We teach our children that they then need to be saved. And we kind of addict them to